Hello there, you're not dreaming. This is Wildflowers podcast, Books, Booze, and Banter. And we are here today at Molloy University, where I'm going to get the honor of interviewing Nelson DeMille and Alex DeMille for Bloodlines. So our podcast is going to be a little different. There's not going to be any wine drinking right now. And the only book we're going to be talking about is Nelson's book, but very little bantering too. But I hope you enjoy it, and let's get on with the show. Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming on this Friday evening. It's so nice to see you here. I am Carol Honig. I'm an author and a publishing consultant, and I'm here with my business partner Peggy for on-the-road book events. We did have the bookstore here in Rockville Center called Turn of the Corkscrew Books and Wine, but now we just do off-sites. We also are filming this tonight because Peggy and I can't sit still. We have a podcast called Wildflowers Podcast, Books, Booze, and Banter. Tonight we won't be having the booze. We might do a little bantery, but we're definitely going to have a book. So first of all, let me introduce Alex DeMille. He is a director, film editor, and author of the New York Times best-selling novel, The Deserter, written with Nelson DeMille. He grew up on Long Island and received a BA from Yale University and an MFA in film directing from UCLA. It's a lot of short letters there. He has won multiple awards and fellowships for his screenplays and films, including The Absence, which was named Best Film at Comic-Con in 2012. He has edited numerous commercials, shorts, and independent feature films, among them My Nephew Emmett, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Live Action Short in 2018. As for Nelson DeMille, he is the New York Times bestselling author of 22 novels, 7 of which were the #1 New York Times bestsellers. His novels include The Maze, The Deserter, written with Alex, The Cuban Affair, Word of Honor, Plum Island, The Charm School, The Gold Coast, and The General's Daughter, which was made into a major motion picture starring John Travolta and Madeline Stowe. He has written short stories, book reviews, and articles for magazines and newspapers. Nelson DeMille is a combat-decorated U.S. Army veteran. Can we give him a hand for that? He's a member of Mensa, Poets and Writers, and the Authors Guild, and past president of the Mystery Writers of America. He is also a member of the International Thriller Writers, who honored him as 2015 Thriller Master of the Year. So please do me a favor and welcome Alex DeMille and Nelson DeMille.
Thank you, Carol.
You're very welcome. It's always a treat to see you, Nelson. Thank you. You didn't have your microphone up. You didn't have your microphone up to your mouth so people didn't hear you say that.
It's always a treat to see you.
That's what I want to hear. So we are filming this for my podcast, so, you know.
I'm ready for my close-up.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. So I'm going to hold this close so you can all hear me, and just so that, you know, if you can't hear anybody, just let us know. So I did the introduction, and where to begin? This book is so intense. You had me going crazy, and I had so many questions while I was reading it, and I did get some of the answers to it in the acknowledgments, because I saw that where you did get some help in the details, because there's so many details, and it was just fascinating. But the way you write about the details, I thought you were in Berlin. Were you not ever in Berlin?
We've both been there. We went, one of my first trips to Europe ever was with my father to Berlin in the late 90s. We've both been about 4 times.
Oh, okay.
We didn't go I was going to go for this book as a research trip, and then the pandemic started, and it never happened. So
yeah,
there's some places in this book you wouldn't go as a tourist, and I never went, so I had to do some online research, talk to people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you did a lot of research, did you not?
I did,
yeah. That was, yeah, and that was, so some of all the locations that you mentioned though, are they real locations?
Some of them, like there's some bars, restaurants, clubs, and things like that are not.
Right.
You know, his famous hotel is a real location, obviously, all the landmarks. It was a combination of both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there. I mean, I really felt like I was there when I was reading this book.
Have you ever been?
No. Just,
But now you want to go, right?
yeah, definitely.
And I will say, so it was a quick aside, often the geography suggests the plot, you know, especially for, I'm not going to give it away before towards the ending. You know, look
Right.
at the layout of the city and where is this going to happen, where's that going to happen. You kind of do like location scouting for your book, just like kind of virtually going around the city. It's a lot of fun.
Well, that first chapter just pulled me in right away. I was just like, damn, he did it again. So the main characters are Scott Brody and Maggie Taylor. But you have a wide cast of characters, and I'm curious, as being co-writers, how did you flesh these people out? Like, how did you two, no, he didn't look like that, no, like, how did you flesh that out?
Is that my question?
It's whoever wants to
You guys
answer.
hear me? Is this?
Yeah.
my work? Well, you know, Alex did the first draft. There's different ways to co-author a book. Sometimes you do alternate chapters, but then you got a different voice.
Yeah.
But I let Alex do the first, you know, round, the first draft. So he did all the heavy lifting. He did the research. The characters, though, you know, we kind of, you know, coordinated, collaborated on the characters. This is the second book in the series. The first book is The Deserter. So the main characters of Scott Brody and Maggie Taylor had been created by Alex and I prior. Does anybody read The Deserter? Anybody? Oh, so we got a couple of good. And then there was their boss is Colonel Dombrowski. He comes back.
Yes.
Like any series, you bring the characters back. So the characters went on a big challenge for this book. The secondary characters were more of a challenge because we had to bring them in from, you know, at a whole cloth. The plot, you know, was mostly Alex too, because Alex was a screenwriter. I said, we're going to split this book down the middle. We're going to do the same, not equal amount of work. You're going to write the first draft, do all the research.
Well, you could
create
do
the
that
secondary characters, and I did not do a lot of heavy lifting on this book, so.
He's underselling himself a little bit.
Yeah.
But I did the editorial, and I was the editor.
Oh, okay.
I took the first draft and put myself in a position of the editor. You know, and after 22 books, I know what, you know, I'm not an editor, but I've been edited 22 times by, you know, some good editors and some not so good editors. So I kind of know what knew what worked, and I read it as though I was the editor of the book. And then now and then I had to be the collaborator, the co-author, and, you know, we had to rewrite some scenes, that type of thing. But, you know, somebody has to be kind of in charge.
Right.
I was in charge editorially, but, you know, as far as the craft, I think they let Alex do a lot of the work on this one.
So did you have like an outline, Alex, when you first started? Like, did you and your dad talk about, like, okay, this is what's going to happen, or?
I was raised to be anti-outline. It's a real
I'm the same way.
It's a real problem for a screenwriter, though.
Oh, yeah.
That I think could get me into trouble. But for a book, I mean, obviously a lot of novelists do outline. The thing, you know, this is a mystery. It's kind of like peeling the layers of the onion, the story. So the thing we started with, obviously, was the instigating event is this murder. The question is who, but also the big question is why. And I knew the why going in. I had no idea how we were gonna get from like point A to point Z, and that kind of filled in as we were writing.
Oh, I love that. So you knew by how it was going to end.
Not how exactly, but I knew the answer to the mystery. Say that.
Oh, okay.
But not the logistics or the scenes or anything, or who was.
And you were okay with that, Nelson?
Yeah, when I first started reading it, I didn't know where it was going either. There was no outline, and I was tempted to say, you know, Alex, where the hell is this going? You know? Because there's a lot of twists in this plot.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
My plots tend to be linear and kind of straightforward. I put a twist in now and then. But Alex was, you know, kind of the master of the twist, and, you know, a lot of red herrings and that type of thing. It's a murder mystery, and, you know, the heart of it is a murder mystery. The detectives in this case happen to be Army Criminal Investigation Division, but it's still a murder mystery, and we all love murder. We all grew up on murder mysteries. There were so many different ways to go about it. And I was kind of, you know, kind of liked the idea that I didn't know where it was going either.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. Now, Alex, how were you feeling when he was reading it? You were wondering, okay, what's going to happen? Is he going to like this draft, or did that concern you at all?
In the beginning, I mean, this book is, I mean, despite being a follow-up to The Deserter, it's a very different kind of book. I mean, it's the same genre, but the structure of the story, the kind of story, is very different. Our process was very different. Again, he was, in the beginning, more hands-off. The Deserter, we were passing it back more frequently. While I was writing this book, my father was writing The Maze for much of the time. So there was months where I was just on my own. So it was a little nerve-wracking when I was like, here's 5 months of work. Let me know what you, let me know what you think of it, you know. So.
Well, I was reading it, I kept thinking, the two of you, because several years ago I had a friend who wanted to co-write a book with me, and I'm more my own writer, I don't know, but I was like, okay, she wants, I won't say ride my coattails, but she wanted to write a book with me. And we were together for maybe 2 or 3 months or whatever, and then I was like, you know what, you can run with the book. It's your book, take it, do whatever you want with it. But she's a friend, and we stayed friends, but she wasn't related to me. And so when you have to see each other at family gatherings and stuff, was there ever any prickly times, or where you just worked it out?
It worked. I mean, look, I've now written 2 books and he's written 23. So, you know, I didn't have too big of an ego about it. But at the same time, I also feel like just on a fundamental level, we have similar tastes. You know, I mean, to me, that's the hardest part about, one of the hardest parts of collaborating. One would be ego, and the other would be, we have different ideas about what's good. And I don't think we have that. I think we're pretty,
That's great.
we might have different ideas about how to get there, different instincts, but ultimately, I think when he, I would have a problem when he'd come with a solution to it, I would 9 times out of 10 be like, maybe sometimes even more than that, yes, that's right. And when I would push back on something, he was pretty open to that too.
Okay.
So.
Well, you know, and I've always loved the dialogue in your books. No, I mean, I remember reading The Gold Coast and just howling and just loving the dialogue. That's when I fell in love with your writing. And I'm not the only one, I know. But when you were writing the dialogue, did the two of you share that as well?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. You know, maybe a lot of the dialogue is mine. For the main characters, I started off doing the dialogue for the 2 main characters in The Deserter. But the dialogue for all the other characters mostly was from Alex. But to go back, Carol, to what you said about, you know, your friend wanting to collaborate with you. Collaboration is very difficult. Co-authoring is very difficult. I only co-authored one other book in my life, Mayday. Anybody read Mayday? Yeah, and it was 1979, and it was a TV movie. It was a movie of the week for CBS. Starred Don Johnson.
Oh my
and,
goodness,
you know, the book did it. But I had a childhood friend, Tom Block. I'm from Elmont, and he lived down the street, and we knew each other since we were 4 years old, and we grew up together. We were very good friends, close as brothers. And he became a USAF pilot, and I became an author. And I wanted to write this book, Mayday, which is an airline disaster novel. And I said, there's so many technical things here. Maybe I'll ask Tom, and let's see if we can co-author this. So he said, sure. This was a mistake. This is a clash of egos, 2 big egos. Airline pilot, ex-infantry officer, this was not a good thing. We had been friends for probably 30-some years, and it ruined the friendship.
Oh, really?
The book was successful. The book itself was successful. Great reviews, you know, the Literary Guild made selection, I think it was, and then also the TV movie. We made friends again, but it was a very toxic process.
Yeah.
And yet we were able to, actually, the goal was to get the best book possible, and we did that. So I said, never again. I had a little sign on my desk that said, collaborators will be shot. And I said, never again will I do this. Fast forward 30-some years, and the publishers asked me if I would create a series, a co-authored series. We decided, and I said no at first, because I didn't want to co-author, but But they, they kind of like wanted this, and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. My agents wanted it, so I said okay. But I couldn't find a co-author. I started with a co-author that wasn't working out just the way I thought it was. But one day I was just sitting by myself in my lazy boy recliner with a drink in my hand, and nobody, the publisher's like, yeah, we're either going to abandon this project or we're going to go ahead with it, we're going to do something. And I thought of Alex, and I gave him a call that night, and I said, do you want to co-author a book with me? And he said, no. He said, I think I heard the Tom Block stories too many times, you know. And then, but then I mentioned the number.
That can help.
Yeah, he said, let's talk. So, that's how this whole thing got started. So this is the second book in the series,
Right.
and there's one more to go, but assuming this is successful, I think it will be. The next one will be, the series will continue.
So what, besides the number, what convinced you? Were you, like that first process, that had to be a little disconcerting, no?
Yeah, I mean, he told me, he said, it's easy, you can do it.
It's easy. It's no problem.
Yeah. It's like when he used to push salt on me when I was a kid and tell me it was good for me.
Oh, oh, do tell.
Honestly, it really wasn't about working with him. My trepidation was, could I write a novel? I've never written a novel before. It's a hard thing to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Even if you're coming from other forms of creative writing, I wasn't sure I would be able to shift gears. I mean, I love the form. I've written short stories when I'd attempted a novel or two when I was too young to even try, but I did it anyway. But doing it for real and writing something that is commercial, entertaining, a thriller, all these things, I just wasn't sure. But I think it was the specifics of it because the concept for The Deserter was already decided on by the publisher and by my father. That actually already started writing a book with a different co-author, and it didn't work out. So I had this like example of a failed version of it. Which was you hadn't really done much work on it yet, and it was realizing how much work you would have needed to do, and it would have had to change it anyway. Anyway, so I sort of saw some mistakes that could have been made, and I had an idea for how to change it. So it was because I had a specific reason to do the book. Like I'm like, oh, I can see a story, and I can see how I have an idea for this book. I think that helped like make me confident about it.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Well, because I write notes down when I'm reading books, and I'm like, one thing I wrote was like, this is a hefty, satisfying meal. Like this is just, and I could easily see it on the big screen. And I'm curious if that's how you two could envision it.
Well, you're the screenwriter.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, people have asked, are you going to adapt your books into screenplays, or do you think about the screenplay you're writing? It was actually a pleasure and a privilege to not think about it at all, and do things that you would never do in a screenplay, and let somebody else worry about how you would possibly translate that, So I just kind of reveled in the form of the novel. I think it can make a good film. People have said, or a series, like a limited series kind of thing. Everything's been on hold, obviously, because of the strike, so we don't have any news, if there is any news, but hopefully we will hear something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal, screenplay writing. I mean, somebody tried to encourage me to do that with my novel. Not at all.
I think it's hard to adapt your own work.
Yeah, I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't play this game. No, not at all. So in the description that I was sent, let me see if I can put my glasses on. So this is what it stated. It says, the novel resonates with contemporary global tensions, offering readers a front row seat to a world in turmoil. Furthermore, Alex DeMille's meticulous research into Army intelligence not only immerses readers in the arcane world of CID, and that stands for Criminal Investigation Division, correct?
Right.
Okay. But also satisfies the cravings of genre aficionados seeking authenticity. And I couldn't agree more. So Alex, could you tell us a bit about that research and like what was involved in all of that research?
Well, so my father's a veteran, I'm not. So I'm on my own, I don't think I'd set out to write a story with U.S. Army in characters, but his knowledge and experience is kind of a safety net in that department. But beyond, as far as the culture, as far as, how do people behave in relative to the chain of command, or at least what is the normal behavior? Our characters are abnormal, but you sort of need to have like a starting point. But a lot of it was, just research about learning specific things. Like, for instance, it's mentioned in the book, but there was a story from maybe 2015 where the Germans learned that the Americans were spying on them and sucking up all this like phone conversation and text messages out of the American embassy, and that like spy nest in the embassy never really got shut down. So that was a thing where I thought, oh, immediately this is rich, this is something we can use, and then I had to look into how does that really work, and so every avenue was like, okay, now I have to either make it up if I can't find anything, or at least get the facts I can to like inspire me to make up the rest, because I kept reminding myself this is not a nonfiction book, this is not a history book, this is a novel, so it's okay to use our literary license. But
right, absolutely. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. So Nelson, you've been writing books for quite some time, I would say. Yeah. And the publishing industry has had some changes over the years. Can you tell us maybe what some of those biggest changes that you've noticed over the years with the publishing industry? Is that a painful subject for you? Because I know it can be.
So there's somebody here from my publishing Simon & Schuster, so I gotta take a look at. I bore Alex with stories about how publishing used to be. It used to be collegial.
It sounds really fun.
It used to be fun.
Yeah.
It was collegial, there was maybe too much drinking, and too many of those literary lunches, those 3 martini lunches back in the day. There's always a bottom line. You have to make money, but that wasn't the real goal. I think it was the goal, but they weren't making believe they were looking for new voices. They were publishing poetry. They wasn't going to make a nickel. These people love books. These are all book lovers. These are not business people. And New York was a different city too, maybe. And it was more collegial, but also more social, much more social. And this was a day when I remember walking along Fifth Avenue. My publisher, Warner Books, was on Fifth Avenue, and I was going someplace else. So I said, well, let me just stop up. And this is the day when there was no security. And I walked up, got on the elevator, upstairs, and I said to the receptionist, tell Nancy, that was my publisher, that Nelson's here to see her. And it was like totally unannounced. And we've all seen Mad Men, right? The people had liquor in the office. Well, this is true. Everybody had a bottle in the office. And my first publisher was Bernie Geis, who published Jack and Suzanne's Valley of the Dolls, and he published William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist. And when he went to Bernie had a duplex office. His office was on the second floor. To get down back to the reception area, there was a fire pole. You had to take the fire pole down. We weren't allowed to take the staircase. But he walked into Bernie's office, and the first thing he did was, he poured cognac, and Brendan, I'm trying to think of the Irish poet's name, Brendan Behan, a writer. Brendan used to get drunk every day and come to Bernie's office and sleep on Bernie's couch. Sleep it off until 7 o'clock when we began round 2 of drinking. So it was that kind of, but it wasn't just publishing, it was New York, but it was, and it was fun. And I, tell Alex these stories.
And he's like, why is it not happening now?
Everything's very buttoned down there. You gotta have an appointment like a week in advance. You gotta go to your publisher's office. But the economics have changed too, because of Amazon, because of ebooks. Some of the stuff is good, and some of it not so good. I think ebooks are good. I'm one of the authors who always said ebooks are good. What happened to the independent bookstores is not good. Independents really got hurt, and also the chains got hurt. It became like it was like survival of the fittest. When I first got into this business, most books were sold, maybe 80% were sold through independent bookstores. Then the Daltons and the Waldens, if you remember those from the shopping malls, that was like the big thing. Now you go to the shopping mall, you go to Dalton or Walden, and buy books there, and that was okay too. And then Barnes and Nobles got bigger, and then it was Borders, and et cetera, and then regional chains. And then everybody complained about the chains.
Yep.
The chains got too big, they got, they ate Walden, Dalton, and they eating the independents. And then the chains, ran up against Amazon.
Yeah.
And they started closing up, and Borders, which was a huge national chain, closed up. They survived already. The only national chain is Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
And so, look at it, it's capitalism, survival of the fittest. But it is also books, so more books get into the hands of more people, yes, if they want them. When I was growing up, you're much younger than me, but for me to get a hardcover book, I had to go to Gimbel's or Macy's and go in the basement and see if
really?
they had there was no bookstores around
Yeah.
Long Island. There was a couple, but they were paperback bookstores. You had to go to Manhattan in order to find a hardcover book. There literally wasn't much around. So, some things are better. I mean, e-books are good. They're good.
Right.
The thing for authors about the e-books, sometimes, in the old days, if you've been writing for a long time and, you've been, let's say, either retired or dead for many years, your books will go out of print and they will never be seen again.
Yeah.
But with e-books, you're an e-book author for eternity.
Yeah. Exactly.
E-books don't die. I mean, you'll be 100 years from now, and they're looking for a Nelson DeMille or an Alex DeMille book or a Carol Honig book. It'll probably be there as in cyberspace, waiting for anybody who wants to buy it. So that's a good thing too.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, well, both Peggy and I used to work for Borders, and we saw how the chips fell over time. And then we opened our own bookstore, and that was for an independent bookstore.
Yeah.
So Al, you mentioned, Alex, that you tried a novel when you were younger, whatever. Do you remember when you realized that your dad was a best-selling author? Do you have any memory of that?
I think I knew. I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know he was. I didn't know his career was remarkable for a while.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
kind of what you grow up with, and then you see other people be impressed with your dad, and you start to think, oh, this is real. And then when I was old enough, I got to go to his publishing parties, which was a lot of fun. And that's when you're like, oh, somebody spent a lot of money on this party.
Yeah.
This must be important. Yeah.
Yes. I think I went to one of those parties.
Yeah.
I recall. Yeah. So are you working? So you're working on another novel? Both working?
Yeah. One solo, and then I'm working on the follow-up now, The Bloodlines.
Okay, awesome. So I don't want to hog all the questions. I'd like to open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, take advantage of this. It's pretty awesome.
Does anybody here want to be a writer?
Oh, yeah.
No,
First,
no. Sorry.
Just want to be readers.
You want to be reading?
Okay, well, this gentleman has his hand.
Oh, okay. I don't.
I was just curious,
Right.
what is the genesis of the idea? Like, you have to have an aha moment to say, oh, that's clever. How does that come about? You're just eating breakfast one day and you have that epiphany? Because that is the genesis of it. You have to have this, like, really unique idea, or else it becomes pedestrian. Everybody else thought of it.
Eating breakfast or having a scotch?
Did everybody hear the question? Everybody can hear the
Yes,
question.
yes,
Right,
we
yeah.
heard
Every book had a different genesis. My first book, I'm a boy with 22 books, but the first book, By the Rivers of Babylon, 1978, it was actually my publisher, Bernie Geis, who published Jack and Suzanne and William Peter Blatty, and he had this idea, this burning idea By the Rivers of Babylon. And I don't know if you read it or not, but it's an Arab-Israeli conflict, and which is kind of new back in '78. And unfortunately, here we are 30 years later, and it's still, there with us. That was his idea. The second idea was, my book was Cathedral, and I used to get tickets to the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral every year. So Monsignor Rigney was a friend of mine at the cathedral. It was hard to get tickets for the steps during the parade, and the parade is going by, St. Patrick's Day, and next to me was this guy, Frank Bowles, Captain NYPD, and he had started the hostage negotiating team that year, I think after the Munich Olympics. He was very famous for that he started his hostage negotiating team on the NYPD, one of the first in the country, if not the first. And he said to me, wouldn't it be something if the Irish Republican Army busted into this place and took over the cathedral during the parade. And I said, I have an idea for a book. Thank you, Greg, I'm one of a beer. And then on and on. It comes from someplace, because if you're a novelist and you're desperate and thinking of ideas and thinking, what am I going to do next, then things that are coming to you are not just things. There are things that can be maybe translated into a novel. I think that's how most of them started. But the series is a little bit different. The series, like by John Corey's series or this new series, you already have the series and you already have the characters. The guy's either NYPD, Joint Terrorist Task Force, whatever he is. In this case, Army Criminal Investigation Division. You still need the idea, but at least you have the outline of what you're going to do next. So the series is in some ways easier, but in other ways more complex, because you've got to carry the baggage from every book in the series forward without regurgitating everything from the first book of the series. So yeah, but that's always the question is always, where do you get your ideas? And sometimes I don't even know where they come from. How about you? What do you like this book, Bloodlines, was Alex's idea. I never actually asked him where the idea came from.
Well, again, yeah, because it's a series. Starting with some parameters is really helpful. So, yeah, Army CID, it's going to be a crime involving the Army. We want it to be overseas. We're somewhere overseas that I think is interesting. It might be dramatic, and I know about Berlin. Let's do a murder mystery in Berlin. That sounds fun. And then you just kind of kept throwing ingredients in. I'm just fascinated in modern Germany to begin with, so I kind of had a lot of ideas of the things going on there, current events, and how could those plug in to a murder mystery. I'm not going to give it away, but kind of the big reveal of what this is all really about. It just kind of came into my head while I was walking down the street like 4 years ago, or 3 years ago maybe. And I used it for this when I was writing it. I literally walked and I stopped walking. I'm like, oh, that's horrible. I got to put that in a book. So I don't know. I would say in general, when I'm trying too hard, that's kind of when I get stopped up, so it's like I go to the gym or take a walk around the block, and that helps.
Have a drink.
Or have a drink.
Yeah. Who else? A hand over.
I have a question back to the author, the publisher, coming up to you and asking you to co-write something after you've written 22 books. Well, what was the reason for them to ask you, I want you to co-author with somebody?
Right, why did the publisher ask me? Well, they asked me for all the wrong reasons. They said, you're too long between books. We really want, more books out of you. So their idea was, if we can find a co-author, we could maybe get a book out of you every year, a solo book and a co-authored book. But they didn't realize that when you're co-authoring a book, it could take twice as long. It's not a short process. It's some of the times the editorial staff, I don't know if they actually really work with authors. I don't know what authors do. I mean, to co-author a book means to collaborate. And the collaboration, you can take hours and hours and weeks of collaboration where you're not writing, you're just collaborating over the phone. And so the co-author books, the last one actually took longer than if I'd written it myself. So the idea of getting a book out every year, if every alternate book was a co-authored book, was not a good idea. For them, that was their goal. But it turned out to be a good idea in that we created a new series and the first book, The Deserter, actually debuted at #3 on the New York Times list, which is kind of unusual for a brand new series with a co-author. But that was good, and that's kind of sparked us, it sparked the whole idea of let's continue the series. Well, it was a 3-book deal anyway, we're going to continue it, but if the thing had flopped, I don't think we would be sitting here right now. But it was a successful book, and this one's going to be successful.
There's some big authors that co-author, they put their name on the book, they don't have a lot to do with it, but that's not what we did, and maybe that's what they expected, but that's not how we worked.
Did I hear James Patterson's name? I gotta tell you my James Patterson joke. So I called, I know him, so I called Jim the other day, was in Palm Beach, and his wife said, oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't come to the phone. He's writing a book, and I said, that's okay, I'll hold.
That's genius. Anyone else with a question? Oh, we got, yep.
The two of you now, you've disclosed that you're writing individually. Could you share your process, how you do it? Is there a certain time of the day? Is there a specific location? do you target how many pages you want to accomplish over a certain period?
I'll start off. I'm not a morning writer. I mean, you know, there are morning writers or afternoon writers or night writers. My friend who's passed away, Carol Higgins Clark, was a morning writer. She got up, had a cup of tea, and she wrote, and then at noon, she went to lunch with her friends and never went back to it, because she was able to accomplish, and her brain was obviously working at 7 a.m., but mine doesn't. So I do whatever I gotta do in the morning. About 12 o'clock, I'm sitting down, I'm writing, and I usually write till 6 or 7 at night. And when I'm toward the end of the book, especially when I'm, you know, behind on the deadline, you know, I'll write into the night, and I've written a couple of times until dawn. I should go through the night and watch the sun come up. But I'm a good night writer. I'm, you know, got a lot of coffee in me and I'm okay. So, you know, I can do that. I can sit there for a long time and write. Other people I know, or just night writers. I know a few authors who are still just night writers. They just love it at night. It's just quiet, and, you know. So, you know, everybody has a different way of doing it, and I ask authors the same question: when do you write? That's how I do about Carol and other authors who write in different, you know, the biorhythms and all that. They're different for different people, and I think. But the question was, do I have a goal? I don't have a goal of, you know. The goal is only to sit there for 6 hours. That's not. I can't count pages. I can't count words. I don't want to do that because that's like setting an artificial goal. I never had writer's block, and maybe if I did, you know, I'm not dealing with it. I'm going to sit there because eventually, if you realize you can't claim writer's block and get up and go do something else, go play tennis. No, you can't do it. You got to sit there for 6 hours. And there's really no writer's block. Then you realize I got to, you know, this is a job. I got to sit here and finish it. And there are days in that 6 hour period where I could write 1,000 words, and there are other days where I could write 4,000 words, and 5,000 words even. The long-term goal is to produce novels about 200,000 words. 200,000 words in a year, which is, you know, not as bad as it sounds. And but then you got to read, that's first draft, second draft, third draft. I tend to work, you know, set hours. It's usually, like I say, noon to 6. Other writers who just write when when the muse strikes them, and I don't know how they do that, because you have to be there in my office. I sit in the same place, a very stark office with just a desk, and I write longhand. I don't type, so I have yellow pads, and I have a pencil sharpener, and I have pencils, and I have a coffee pot. And that's what I do. And I want to get out of this so badly, but it's only 6 hours, and I stay there until 6 o'clock, which is usually cocktail hour.
Alex, is your process the same?
I have a 5-year-old, so a lot of my life is just dictated by what her rhythms are. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly, when we were kind of in crunch times with this book, I went alone to my in-laws' house. They weren't there in Hudson Valley, which was great. Actually, where I wrote a bunch of this book during the part of the pandemic. But so I was alone in this big house, and I could get up anytime I wanted and start anytime I wanted. So I guess that was the most like pure example of what my schedule would be if I could do whatever. And it was basically, I would waste a bunch of time in the morning until I decided I wasted enough time. I'd start writing at, let's say, noon or 1 p.m. And then I could just kind of keep going until 10 or 11 p.m. And I would stop for lunch. But then I just, once you're flowing and you know you have the luxury of waking up whatever time you want, you know, if you're doing that, that seemed to be what my rhythm was. But normally I'm sticking to more of a sort of 9 to 5-ish schedule. And just on the subject of word count, you brought that up. The first book, I was sort of trying to, I'd never done this before. I was trying to use that as a metric of how much I was getting done, and this. At some point, I had 60,000 words or 65, 70. Oh, I must be halfway through the book, you know. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not halfway through the story, you know. That's what matters. And so I think I was almost overwriting a little bit to get my words sometimes. So I stopped doing that. Well, I'll also say one quick thing about our actual logistics. I think it's interesting because my father uses a #1 pencil and a pad, and I use a laptop. So I write the first draft, email it to his assistant. She prints it out, puts it on your desk, and then he reads it and scribbles with his pencil all over it. and then I got scans back, and so it's really great, actually. I got these images with lines and arrows, and things are crossed out, and sometimes there's like a margin, like see the insert, and there's another page that's written to add something in. It's actually a great way to be, I mean, he's saying he's the editor, it was much more than that, but it's a great way to collaborate, because there was, otherwise, you're working with the editor, working with the copy editor, you got this like Word document with these tiny little margin notes, and you have to click on them, and this was like more tactile. It sort of forced me to look at the pages as if they're pages of a book that somebody had decided to mark up. So it was actually it was an odd process, but it was a really good process.
It worked for you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Really? So I guess you all want your book signed. I'm just guessing, I don't know. So I think what we're going to do, where's Matt? Matt is going to instruct.
I'm going to do it over here.
Oh, we are? Okay, all right. So we're going to have you folks go over to the table, and we just wait. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Yes, thank you.